Here we go. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Inspired Ghost Tracking. Apologies for the slight delay in getting on technical difficulties. Hopefully we are live, and Margaret is online. So, Margaret, if you can confirm whether or not we are online, I would appreciate it.
Yep, I'll see you now.
Okay, great. Excellent. That was always a little bit of a challenge. So you can see the ghost tracking logo, is that correct? Margaret?
1 minute, still coming up.
Okay.
I've just clicked into it. Yes, I see that.
Okay. Very good. Yay. Okay. All right. Well, hey, everybody. I'm Rob Gutro, and I am a member of the team, and I'm going to be giving you a walk through the Causey Mansion tonight. So, but before I do that, I'm going to turn it over to Margaret Ehrlich. She is the manager of Inspired Ghost Tracking. So, take it away, Margaret.
All right. Hey, y'all. I have to start it with that because we start all of our meetings with that. I am thankful that Rob can figure a way for us to go live and still have our meetings. We meet the first Friday of every month in Glen Burnie, and I am one person that hates to cancel anything. So therefore, we're going live so that you can be with us. I hope that a lot of my meetup groups out there and listening in give us a shout out so we know that you're there. So normally I start this with upcoming events and what we have planned. I'm going to go through them kind of fast with it and just with my guest speakers. So May 1st, we're going to have our medium, Troy Klein, talking to us. And he could be online or in person. It depends on what this COVID does to us. Investigation, at this point it's still on. Deborah Diamond, who is going to, she's a psychic medium and she's talking to us. July 3rd, we have Keith Miller with the use of deviation tools and the use of rituals and investigations. August 7th, we have Anthony and Dina Holmes. They're two of our members that will be talking guided path. October 7th, we will have Rob Gutro, who will be talking about his new book, Shocking and True Ghostly Encounters, Case Files of Inspired Ghost Tracking.
And you can see that on screen right now. That the cover's right up there.
And then November 6th, we have Casey Lane with 15 years of dealing with dead people. So, of course, tonight we have Rob Gutro, who's going to be talking to us about the Causey Mansion. Did I get it right this time?
Yes, you did.
So I am turning it back over to Rob, and I will be hoping to watch for y'all's questions so that I could tell Rob who's saying what.
Okay. Thank you, Margaret. So yeah, I appreciate you looking at the chat room to share any questions. So with that, we will just jump right into the Causey Mansion. This is a look at the Causey Mansion from the front. Now, the Causey Mansion has been around for quite some time. It was built in the 1700s, and it's gone through a couple of different families. And recently, it was purchased by two gentlemen who are partners, and they turned it into a luxury bed and breakfast. And this is in the town of Milton, Delaware. So this is a, a sky look, kind of a Google Earth look at Milton, Delaware. And you can probably see my cursor there. So the Causey Mansion is right smack in the middle of this town. And this street that runs up and down here is actually the main street that goes through the town. It's very small and very nice little town. But there's a lot of property there. There are several acres on the property, and they have a big backyard. As a matter of fact, here's a quick look at what the town looked like back in the late 1700s when the mansion was purchased, so or built rather. So the mansion was built in 1757, and it was first lived in by a couple named Levin and Ann Crapper. He was actually a magistrate and a landowner. So the original property was really big. It was 1,500 acres, and they did some farming on there. And we found out that there were houses that were where now the open backyard stands. And there's a lot of weird things that actually happen in that open backyard, and we'll get to them as we go through the process tonight and take you on a walk through the backyard as well as into the house. So as you can see by this timeline, there were a couple of different couples there. Peter and Maria Causey were the ones that the mansion is named after, of course, and they lived there in 1850. He was actually Delaware's 38th governor, so he was pretty well known. The mansion itself is in Greek Revival style, and it's pretty much kept in the same same outlying structure as it was when it was built. So it was in 1986, by the way, that this became a bed and breakfast. And then it was purchased again in 2014 by Jan and Joe, and they maintained the bed and breakfast. So this is a look at the Causey Mansion from the front of it. An old picture, I think it was like the early 1900s. And this is another view of the Causey Mansion today. Very similar to the views that you saw earlier. Now we're going to take a look at Peter Causey. As I mentioned, he was a governor. Looks like he needed a haircut, but you know. Anyway, so Peter Causey has been reputed to also haunt the mansion. We're gonna actually find out about Peter Causey when we get up to the second floor. But there are a number of things about this house that are interesting. First of all, it's just about 15 minutes located 15 minutes away from the Atlantic Coast Beach in Delaware, and it's in the town of Milton, Delaware. All the rooms have period decor, and there's a lot of antique fittings. There's private bathrooms. There's sitting areas. Some even have soaking tubs. There's actually a piano on the first floor, and one of the owners actually plays the piano for people, for guests. And there's 4-post beds. And there's a beautiful garden. You'll see a couple of pictures of that too. But what's interesting here is that they really try and keep it the historic aspect of the mansion. So there are a lot of antiques in there and a lot of artifacts. And as a medium, mediums can sense energy. So what that means is that we can sense whether or not somebody loved an object or somebody hated an object, or if it was a happy home, because when you live in a house and you're happy, you kind of leave an energy imprint or residual energy in the walls. If you argue a lot, that bad energy gets soaked up by the walls. So people who are sensitive, like mediums, like me, can come in and we can figure out if it's a happy home or there was a lot of trauma in there. It's the same kind of thing too with antiques. So mediums who are sensitive can pick up an antique and feel bad energy from it, or good energy, depending. So the piano, by the way, had a lot of good energy. But when you're a medium, you can see, hear, feel, smell, and get a tactile sensation, a touch, from any ghost, really. That's an earthbound entity that stays in a fixed location. And a spirit, conversely, is also energy, but has crossed over. So with that, we were tasked to find out what was going on in the mansion. The two owners had been noticing a lot of different things going on in the mansion, and they said that their guests have reported things. And as we go through some of the rooms, I'll tell you about some of that too. But it certainly makes it an interesting conversation when you go downstairs for the breakfast part of the bed and breakfast, and so one of your guests tell you that your bed was shaking, or somebody pulled the sheets off of you, and there was nobody there. So, all right. So we're going to take a walk through the mansion grounds. On the mansion grounds, there was actually slave quarters that still stood. Of course, they repaired them and so forth. There's an old picture down there on the bottom, and there's the refurbished slave quarters on the top right-hand corner. We went in there, and we didn't get any kind of energy in there at all. It was kind of surprising. But it was really devoid of energy. And here's a look of the inside. There was a big scooped out dent in the wall and there was a ladder that goes up to a loft. So it was, of course, really small. The picture makes it look big, but it was actually very, very small. And you would have to climb up that rickety ladder to go sleep in the loft. But again, there was no energy there. So we took a look at the backyard areas. I'm going to skip by the next picture because there was a tennis club that we got this picture at the end, but I'll explain that later. So here's a brief look at the gardens. The gardens are really beautiful. So if you decide to stay over there at the Causey Mansion, there's a really nice area to sit outside, and they really maintain a beautiful garden there. So in the backyard area, I think what we'll do is we'll go back to the backyard area in a little bit. I mentioned that there's a lot of antiques inside, so we'll go back to the music room. In the music room, there was kind of a weird feeling with that. It was kind of like a net. I sat, from where this picture is taken, I sat looking at the piano, and it felt like there was kind of a field of energy. It was like a woven net crisscrossing the room, and it really made it difficult to tune into anything specific. But as you can see, there's a lot of antiques in that room, and all of those things are emanating energy, so it's really hard as a medium to tune into anything. But there was nobody living, no ghosts in that particular room. This is the sitting parlor that is right next to the music room, and again, there was nobody in there. However, I'm going to get to this in a couple of minutes. A lot of the guests have seen shadow figures walk through there. And that includes one of the owners. So we will get to that. In the dining room, that is where we first met a guy who called himself Charlie. He told, when I go on paranormal investigations, I can actually see what ghosts look like in my mind. They actually show me what they look like. So I bring a sketchbook, and I try to sketch them out. So when we first walked into the dining room area, Tom first sensed a guy and started describing him, and I sensed him too, and we got the name Charlie. We both got the name Charlie, and so I sketched him based on both of our descriptions. He was definitely an intelligent energy, and what that means is he's an interactive ghost. So interactive ghosts can answer questions. If you use scientific equipment, you can get different readings to prove that they're there in some way. So, for instance, if you have a flashlight and you can ask the ghost to turn the flashlight on and off, sometimes they will. If you ask them questions and you have a digital recorder, sometimes their voice will appear on the digital recorder, even though you might not audibly hear it. So that's another piece of equipment that we use. We also use an electromagnetic field detector. What that is a piece of equipment that electricians use to detect electromagnetic fields, because electromagnetic fields in your house really need to be dampened. Electromagnetic fields will give you feelings of uneasiness, like maybe feelings of being watched, all kinds of crazy sensations. If you have wiring that's exposed, you can get those feelings, and it's certainly not paranormal. But in the paranormal field, we use them because, as I mentioned, ghosts are energy. So ghosts are energy coupled with memories, personality, and knowledge. And they decide to stay in a fixed location of their choosing. Now, Charlie decided to stay at the Causey mansion. Why? I don't know. But his personality really came through to both of us, because we both got the same kind of personality from him. He was gregarious. We knew he was a cigar smoker. We kind of smelled a hint of cigar smoke. He's very likable, but he was a womanizer, and he let us know that. And his energy was primarily seated in the dining room. So, as a side note, after we conducted our investigation, we went outside with the owners, and we were sitting outside on their patio, and one of their neighbors came up, and she knew about the ghosts in there, and she was talking to us, and she said, "Did you guys find anyone in the dining room?" And we told her, yes, we did, and we told her about Charlie. We told her, that he was kind of a womanizer, and so what she said next surprised us, but really didn't surprise us, because she said when she was sitting in there, she felt a man's hand run up the course of her thigh. So that was definitely Charlie. So she confirmed his personality right then and there, where we were still there. So we were actually able to figure out who Charlie may be, and we'll get to that in a little bit. So with that, here's a look at what the dining room looks like, and where he likes to sit. As you can see, there's lots of antiques in this room too. So Charlie was sitting at this part of the dining room. All right. After our investigation, we were talking to one of the owners about Charlie and about the other ghosts and so forth, and so he went into this cabinet over here, and he said, "That looks like somebody that I recognize from an old photograph." So he pulled the photograph out, and here's where confirmation always comes in handy. This is the guy that looks like Charlie. And you can see him right here too. So that's exactly that's exactly who we thought what Charlie looked like. If you notice the big prominent mustache. And if you go back a little bit, he had a big prominent mustache. That's kind of the giveaway. So this, I think that was from the tennis club picture. All right, now we're going to move on to the second ghost that we found. The second ghost we found was not on the first floor. Charlie was on the first floor, but the other ghost we found was on the third floor. Her name was Margaret, coincidentally, just like our very own Margaret. Now Margaret showed me that she had her hair up. She showed me what kind of dress she liked to wear. So I sketched all these things out, and all we can do is take notes and sketch things out and try to figure out who they are and what they wanted or what they're doing there. So at first, she made me feel like she was residual energy, but she wasn't residual. What happened is Margaret would come and go into different rooms on the third floor, and then she wound up going up and down the stairs, and I'll get to that in a minute. So her hair was long and pulled back, and she wore a long gray dress with puffy sleeves, and it looked like she was wearing kind of an apron over her dress, so I'm not sure what that meant. She was predominantly on the third floor. Now there's one bedroom on the third floor, and the other rooms are used for storage up there. But when we went into to one of the rooms, it kind of hit me like a brick when I went in there. So, first of all, she told me her name. So anytime an entity can tell me their name, that means they're an intelligent haunt. That means they're actually there. And there's no indication at all that she was unhappy. She definitely wasn't mean. She had no ill will toward the occupants. And she just liked staying in the third floor because that was her place. Ghosts actually choose where they want to stay in a house. Just like Charlie decided he was going to stay in the dining room. Margaret decided she was going to stay up on the third floor or walk up and down the stairs. So she was a Caucasian woman, and she had long dark hair swept up in her face into a neat bun, and possibly like the 1880s. But what's interesting here is that as Tom and I were standing in the third floor bedroom, Margaret actually pulled my hair. And then as she approached, I actually got chills. Now, people will report feeling cold spots when they're in the presence of a ghost. And there's a reason for that. Scientifically, there's a reason for that. So here's why. Because I mentioned ghosts are energy, they need energy to get strong enough to communicate with us. So they use heat, light, water, and electricity. Those are energies that they can use. That's why you see like electric lights go on and off if there's somebody dead in your house. They're trying to draw the energy from the electricity. They also use emotional energy. Fear, anxiety, depression, and anger are what earthbound ghosts use. Now, I wasn't feeling any of those emotions, so Margaret was obviously drawing off some of the residual energies, the physical energies in the room to communicate with me. Spirits, by the way, spirits of your loved ones use faith, hope, and love to come through. Anyway, so Margaret made me feel a chill. Suddenly I knew she was standing next to me because the air right next to me was colder. So what she did, and what ghosts do to make a cold spot, is they take the motion of energy, the motion of molecules of atmosphere, and they take that energy and slow those molecules down. And slow-moving molecules of air are cold air, fast-moving molecules of air are warm air. So Margaret was actually standing right next to me. So that was pretty interesting. The other thing about Margaret and I'll flip to the next slide. In that same picture with Charlie, which is over here on the right-hand side, there was a woman who had her hair up in a bun, like Margaret. She had the dark hair. She was a Caucasian woman. And it very well could be her. It's just odd that this photograph was presented to us at the very end of the investigation after we showed the owner the sketch, and he had mentioned that he thinks that these people definitely may be in there as ghosts. So we did learn from the owners that there was actually another paranormal investigation team that came in about a year before us. And what was mind-blowing is that they said there was a female ghost there, and they also said that the woman's name is Margaret. So I think that's a pretty good confirmation. I mean, we've got a sketch of what she looks like. We've got a photograph of a woman that looks like her. We've got her name. We know where she likes to dwell. And we have another confirmation from another paranormal team. So this photograph is part of what's called the Causey Mansion tennis team. Apparently there was a tennis team in the mansion, and I don't have the dates on it. But in this photograph, there are actually 3 women that actually have their hair up this way. And there are a couple of other pictures like that. So anyway, so those are the two women. I mean, the 2 ghosts that we were able to actually confirm. This is a look at the sleeping quarters where I first encountered Margaret. It was pretty much right here in the center, where this carpet is, that she kind of walked over and stood right next to me. So it's always a little bit startling. All right. I mentioned that Margaret liked to go up and down the stairs, and we didn't figure it out until after we left and put this together that it was actually Margaret that was on the steps. At first we felt a residual energy. So Margaret apparently liked to go up and down the stairs, and what she did is she left kind of an imprint as she ascended and descended the stairs. So that's what we actually felt, that imprint on the second floor. Here's a look actually at the staircase. So this is the staircase that goes right down to the first floor, and Margaret liked to linger up here on the second landing. By the way, on the second floor, you have to go up actually one more flight to get to the second floor bedrooms, and we'll talk about the bedrooms in just a minute. This door here is the back door. This one goes to the gardens. But Margaret has been actually seen walking back and forth here, and shadow figures have been seen in this particular hallway. So, and we'll show you where people have reported have been sitting when they saw those shadow figures. All right. And this is where they were sitting. They were sitting in the library. The library, if you look down this doorway, right here where the cursor is, you'll see the banister to the stairway. So it's pretty close to the door of the library. And one of the owners, I think it was Jan, told me that he was sitting here in the library one night, and he happened to look over, and a shadow figure was passing across the doorway. And he knew that it was not one of the guests because it was a dark shadow. and there were lights on. So here's the thing about shadow, ghosts in shadow. My theory is that because ghosts are energy, they don't have enough energy. They haven't collected enough energy to show up visibly. So they show up kind of like a negative. They show up as just kind of a dark shadow. And it was most likely Margaret. So if Margaret could get enough energy, emotional or physical energy, she would probably have become visible as and would have been mistaken for a living woman or a woman who was a guest in the house. But instead, Jen just saw a shadow walk by that area right there. There was also no energy in this in the library, so we didn't sense anything. Certainly, if you stay at the bed and breakfast, there's enough books to keep you occupied. All right. So one of the things that we found out later is that one of the guests reported being in their bed and sleeping, and their bed was shaking violently. We found that out later, again, at the end. At the end, they told us all these things. So, because as paranormal investigators, one of the first rules of the road is, especially as mediums, we don't want to know anything about anything before we go in. We want to kind of record what our sensations and feelings are. That's why I carry a journal with me. I write everything down, and then at the end, we put together a report or we discuss it. And present the images that I draw and whatever, and then we see if we can make sense out of it. So one of the guests reported that that their bed was shaken. So coincidentally, Tom was in one of the rooms, and he was up there by himself, and I was downstairs talking to one of the owners, and he said he was laying there with his eyes closed and suddenly felt an extremely fast vibration sensation, like the bed were being violently shaken. So Tom confirmed what the other guest had experienced. He also experienced a sensation of having the sheets tugged, and somebody in one of the other rooms also reported the same thing. So when you get multiple people reporting the same experiences, people who don't know each other, people who've never met each other, you know there's something going on. So I'm thinking it was Margaret, because we did not sense another ghost in there other than Margaret and Charlie. However, we're going to go into a next room, and that's where there's supposed to be another ghost. But I actually had an experience in there. In this particular room, I had an experience. At dawn, I was awakened by what felt like fingers touching the side of my head 3 times. Now, Tom was asleep, and there was no one else in the room, so somebody had touched my head 3 times to wake me up, and it was at dawn. So that was weird. And during the middle of the night, Tom was also awakened by a sound falling on the floor. Something fell on the floor, and nothing was actually on the floor at all when we woke up. So there were some crazy things going on in that particular room. So if you go there, know that you may experience a couple of things. So I don't have a slide for the next room because I don't think we took a picture in there. But the owners decided that they were going to live in the room where Peter Causey lived. Peter Causey actually died in the mansion in 1871, and he died in the room in which Jan and Joey live, because they live on the property to take care of it and make the breakfast and all that. So they mentioned that during a recent paranormal investigation before we got there, some investigators used a flashlight and actually got a ghost to answer questions, and confirmed that it was in fact Peter Causey that is in that particular room. So we didn't get anything in there, but that's the thing about paranormal investigations, is that sometimes the ghosts will come out and communicate with you, other times they won't. they maintain their own personalities. So if they want to talk to you, they will talk to you. If they don't want to talk to you, they will avoid you. So when you go into a place that you may not get anything, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's nothing there. It just means that, if there is something there, they don't want anything to do with you. They want to be left alone, because that's the way people are sometimes. Anyway, one of the other things that I found really odd about this investigation was all the energy that furniture and things can emit. So, two of us had an experience walking by this large Chinese chest. It was a chest that was built in China, and it's an antique. The minute I walked by that chest, I got a sensation of vertigo. And I actually had to go sit down. And I have no idea why. I had no idea at all. About 15 minutes later, one of the owner's mothers came out, and she said that her bedroom is actually behind the hallway where this chest is located. And she said to me, she thought she was going to fall on her head when she walked by that chest. And she said, did you sense anything there? And I told her, I said, I got vertigo as I walked by that chest. And she said, well, that's exactly what I experienced. So Tom went over, and he was able to get a reading on that chest and get a reading about the gentleman that built it and from China. So we put that on in the investigation as well. So it's interesting about the sensations that you can get from just from objects, which is why I don't like going into antique stores, by the way. If you're sensitive and sometimes you feel uneasy and you're in an antique store, that's why. So briefly, I'm just going to go through the portals. There are a couple of portals. A portal basically is a doorway from one place to another that ghosts use. They create those portals because ghosts usually stay in a fixed location. So in order for them to move around a little bit, they can usually only move around in the same property in which they have chosen to stay. We don't know why ghosts can't move around from place to place, but typically they stay where they have chosen. There are exceptions. In the new book, Case Files of Inspired Ghost Tracking, you'll read about the burned ghost, who was an accident victim who followed a nurse home. And we had to take care of crossing her over. So that's in the new book. Anyway, so there are 3 portals. I've outlined them here. I know the sketch is not very good, but when you're standing up and walking, you try to sketch. That's the best you can do. And each of these portals in this backyard they felt like energy. They felt like kind of walking through water. And you're in the middle of an open field, and all of a sudden you feel like you're walking into like a very thick or dense atmosphere. That's what a portal feels like. Sometimes it feels tingling, sometimes it feels energetic, other times it feels like you're walking through water. And what we think is going on there is that in these locations there used to be houses for people that lived on the property and maintained the property or worked the property or something like that. And they left energy behind. And these portals here may be used by some of the ghosts within the mansion, like Margaret or Charlie or Peter himself. So we don't know the answer to that, but we do know that they're there. So, and this is what the property looked like before. So there are a whole bunch of other buildings on there, and now it's just wide open. So we got that picture afterward. Again, another area where there's kind of a portal. So with that, just a quick look as I wrap up. There's a lot of art in the mansion. So these guys are actually art collectors too. So they go on travel and they collect art, and different things from different countries. And of course, as a medium, to me, that drives me crazy because everything gives off different energies, and it's really hard to tune in. But one of the highlights for us, of course, was at the end of the investigation, is that we get to meet their dog Piper. So there's Tom, and there's me, and their dog Piper is the guard dog, all like 12 pounds of him, of the mansion. So with that, I'm going to jump back to Margaret. Before we leave the mansion, is there any questions in the room?
Well, Rob, to tell you the truth, I've been on and off my internet. It keeps dropping. So,
Okay.
I really don't know if there's any questions out there.
All right. Let me see if I can scroll through the questions. I see Dan is there. Thanks to Dan, Brad, Michelle, Troy. Oh, Troy's online. He's in. Yeah.
We have a lot of people online. I think I just scrolled past one.
Okay.
What happens when a house or yard is destroyed or developed?
That's a good question. In terms of the ghost, so if one of the residual imprints we sensed when we were looking back at one of these portals was we got named George. Now George was a ghost for a while that lived there. He lived in a building that existed in one of these portals. I think it was portal number 2. Near. We didn't feel George anymore. George is not intelligent haunt. So George, usually when a building that a ghost haunts is destroyed, there are a couple of theories. I think that usually a ghost will go into the nearest structure. So in the case of George, he didn't go into Causey Mansion, but he could have gone to this other house, which is behind. But then there are other options. Sometimes if somebody passes away in the same location, the light to the other side will open, and the ghost, who is now homeless, will actually be able to sense that light and actually go into the light and cross over. So there are a couple of options. That's a really good question. Actually, I encountered that so Tom and I went and took a trip to England, and we stayed at the Thornbury Castle, which is a bed and breakfast. It's a former Tudor era castle turned into a modern bed and breakfast. And there was a ghost that haunted our room. Long story short, that ghost had never visited Thornbury Castle. I got all these clues and figured out an identity that he was in a battle not far from Thornbury Castle, and Thornbury Castle was the only thing left standing from that time period in which he lived. So that's his ghost wandered over and is now haunting Thornbury Castle. So that can happen with ghosts. They'll find a place close by, or they'll try and just cross over.
All right, so then we have another question. Has a ghost ever followed you home? Of course, Troy has answered with some of it. That one followed him home one time. It took some work to get rid of it.
Yes. Okay. Well, Troy. So Troy is one of the mediums in Inspired Ghost Tracking, and Troy is a very sensitive medium. Troy is actually critical on the team to help cross ghosts over. So if a ghost is ever going to follow anybody home, Troy would be the one, because Troy could help him or her. And the answer, my answer is that no, a ghost has never followed me home. Because normally what we do, and I think that came from Olive, normally what we do before we leave is kind of cleanse ourselves. So, Margaret, do you want to talk about how we go about cleaning the energy?
Come on, Rob. Didn't we just talk about this last night?
We did, but that was a different Facebook Live. That was about my new book.
Okay, so normally if we go into a house, especially if it's a negative energy and all, with the negative, we normally ask them to open their blinds, curtains, bring the light in, and natural light is the best light to use for it. But don't sit around in the dark. Think about it this way. If you're home alone and you're sitting around in the dark, you get depressed, which is your negative feelings and all. Bring a light into it. Nice music, happy music, stuff like that. You don't want to put a lot of negative music on. You can use sage around your house. You can burn candles. We talk about the lavender and the vanilla. There are some that frankincense. Just throw some of those in that Troy told me about. So any of those will cause a more positive effect in your home.
And the only thing I caution is don't let Margaret into your home burn sage because she'll smoke you out. I memorable.
We won't let them live it down. There's your shout out, Greg.
All right. So I see another good question from Carrie. So Carrie asks, so can a ghost attach itself to a piece of art? And will the ghost travel from one place to another with the art? I answered that correctly. That's a great question, Carrie. And the answer is yes. It doesn't happen often, but a ghost can attach itself to a piece of art or something that they really love in life. In my new book, The Case of Ghost Tracking, we changed out from the Emma who attached himself to a piece of jewelry. Then he caused havoc in the house, which we call to. But that's sort of in the file goes back. So you very much have some piece of art, something like that, which is why not fanning anything else. That is the question. Any questions, Margaret?
He's encountered an evil spirit for the last few years. William, you need to get hold of one of us so that we can help you get rid of that evilness.
Yeah, we can. So whenever you encountering something that's not good, if you feel uncomfortable, like Margaret mentioned earlier, is that you do to protect yourself, can play music, you can by lighting, you can envision yourself around a light of energy. And one of my favorite things, of course, to eat is chocolate actually your mood. It's chemical your mood. And Margaret is a chocolate. Margaret. Yeah, that would be. I'm trying to my own. Just well, that sounds like a good time to wrap this up. So, if anybody is interested in joining Inspired Ghost Tracking, you are on the right Facebook page for that. Margaret is the founder. You can just drop her a note. You can even join it from remotely. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be local, really. Margaret organizes different trips to different haunted known places once we can all travel again. They're all pretty interesting. So for those of you who are stuck at home like the rest of us, if you are bored and you're looking for something to read, I have 7 books now. And here's a slide filled with all those 7 books. What a coincidence. So you can go on Amazon and just type in Rob Gutro, Gutro, and there you go. You can get them all under $10 on paperback and under $3.99 on ebook. So that'll give you something to do while we're all shut in for the next couple months. So with that, I am going to turn back to Margaret. Margaret, thank you very much for allowing me to present the Ghost of Causey Mansion, and thanks to everybody in the chat room with all the great questions. Feel free to drop me a note on Facebook, and I will have the links up there to this video. It'll be on my blog, and I'll also share it back on page 2. So with that, I'm going to say good night.
Thank you all for coming. Sorry the sound started messing up. We hope to have that fixed next month if Troy has to go online or on a live.
Sounds good. So everybody stay safe, stay home. Do not do any social interactions. Stay healthy, because I don't want you to be the topic of one of my ghost books. There you go. All right. Good night, everybody.